had the opportunity to work in the U.S. Congress for presidential campaigns, both as a staff person and as an advisor in the executive branch, and then to run for nonprofit organizations.
You've been the forefront advocate for major projects such as DC Vote, aiding Albania in the road to democracy, ending ethnic cleansing in Kosovo, and many more. October 26, 2012 has been recognized by Mayor Vincent Gray as Ilir Zherka Day.
We experienced as immigrants the help and support of so many people. We were advocating for the rights of our relatives, family members, and compatriots that we left behind, essentially. There are parallels with Ukraine, for sure, right? So part of the solution to that is for young people to demand more and to demand better, right? So if you are angry with the way politics is engaged in the United States or with political parties, then part of the solution is not to be part of the problem, right? Is to reject being part of the problem. It's to say, I'm going to behave a different way. But it's one of those experiences where you do something, it's hard, and you get a lot out of that experience, even though it's hard.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of PoliTEA for Teens. And today I have the honor of inviting Mr. Ilir Zherka onto our podcast.
Greetings, Evangeline.
Mr. Ilir Zherka, would you mind just giving a brief background on yourself and some of your accomplishments that you're most proud of?
I appreciate that. So in terms of background, I've worked in public policy essentially my entire life, starting like you in high school, and going through my current career. Throughout that career, I've had the opportunity to work in the U.S. Congress for presidential campaigns, both as a staff person and as a advisor in the executive branch, and then to run for nonprofit organizations. It's been an incredibly fulfilling career. I've worked with a lot of amazing people. And what I learned through all of that work was it really takes a lot of people working together in groups, oftentimes called coalitions, to accomplish big things, big public policy goals. And I'm blessed to have worked with those people and to have had the opportunities that I've had to have a impact on various different issue areas. I took that experience and also that learning of how essential it is to work as a group to create a consulting practice called Civica. And the idea of Civica is that we work with people to help them understand how to achieve their public policy goals or their organizational goals. Most of our clients are nonprofits, and they either have one of those two. Sometimes they have both of those goals. And essentially it boils down to effective interactions and communications and organizing with people. So whether that's nonprofits trying to do that work internally and be effective as an organization, or it's groups of people trying to do that externally with advocacy and with public policy work. So it's been a pleasure to do this work, and I'm thrilled to be with you here talking about it.
Yes, thank you so much. You mentioned your practice at Civica, and I actually was planning on asking you about it and why you decided to start it. And you said to help with this public policy. Now, what interested you initially to get into public policy? You mentioned you started in high school like me?
Yeah. Even
Yeah.
younger than that. So I grew up
Oh,
in a
wow.
very political family. I mean, we were political refugees, Albanians coming from the former Yugoslavia, where we were essentially treated like second-class citizens. And so I grew up going to public demonstrations with my family as often as we went to parks and beaches.
Hmm.
Same thing. We'd pack
Yeah.
food, lunches, we'd make signs, and then we'd go out.
Uh,
Um, I also had just a real strong personal interest in public policy and politics, probably because of that familial connection to it. But
mhm.
my other siblings did not go into this work. So it wasn't like all of us grew up in a political family. We did this. I was drawn to it really early in life. And by my junior year in high school, I decided that this was the career that I wanted to have. And it was mostly around the desire to have an impact to better people's lives. we experienced as uh, newcomers to the United States, as immigrants, um, the help and support of so many people from my schools, my teachers, my counselors, to people who were involved in organizations that we interacted with. And that support from those organizations and from those people made a huge difference in my life and in the lives of my family. And, I got to a point where I was like, I should give back. I should do something to say thank you to all those people. And the best way to say thank you to all of them is to continue doing that work for others. And so I was kind of paying it forward in some way. And so that's what I decided to do. And I went to college and law school with that intent. And I'm thrilled that I was able to do it actually as a career.
That's so amazing. That's exactly the reason why I wanted to get into politics too. When
Oh,
I was a child, I grew up also very invested in politics. I come from a very political family of immigrants. Also, we are also immigrants. Um, and I've always been drawn to politics also. And watching and seeing the stories of kind of the atrocities and injustices within our country, that also sparked my interest. So I'm so excited to hear that it helped you too. So you mentioned that your family is also immigrants from Albania. How did your immigration kind of impact your focus on policy? Because I know that you helped start the like Albanian Society, or group in America.
mhm. So, a big part of what we did as a family was to advocate for the rights of Albanians in the former Yugoslavia. So there's the country of Albania, and then there's the country of Kosovo.
Yeah.
Kosovo is made up about 94% of Albanians as well. Um, and they were under until about 20 years ago under the control of Serbia, their northern neighbor, and and those the repression of Albanians in Kosovo was personal in that members of my family experienced that. Even though we are ethnic Albanians, we actually immigrated from Yugoslavia, not Albania.
Mm.
And a big part of the reason we left was because the opportunities for Albanians were limited. The repression of Albanians was real, and we were basically fed up with it. And so we were advocating for the rights of our relatives, family members, and compatriots that we left behind, essentially. And so that was kind of a critical part of what I grew up with. And in the 90s, as the former Yugoslavia was breaking apart, um, there needed to be an organized effort to, on the one hand, try to prevent the massacres that were happening, for example, in Bosnia.
Yes.
And if those started to happen, and unfortunately they did, the ethnic cleansing campaign that Serbia launched in '98. Our goal was if those atrocities started to happen, how do we convince the United States to intervene, stop the ethnic cleansing, and then support Kosovo's independence? So I was working in Congress at the time in Washington D.C. and had learned a lot by then about organizing and advocacy. And so I was able to um, jump into that and help form the National Albanian American Council, a group called NAC, and to lead that effort in the mid 80s, I'm sorry, the mid 90s through the end of the early 2000s.
Yes, I remember reading your story about Kosovo and how you had to advocate to end the ethnic cleansing. And it kind of reminded me a lot of the situation in Ukraine and Russia. You said yourself in a 2019 Illyria article, quote, "We helped to achieve the nearly impossible." And in this day and age, the Russia-Ukraine situation seems stagnant and as if peace talks are nearly impossible. How do you think that peace talks could be approached between the two countries, coming from your experience with Kosovo?
Yeah, so there are parallels with
Yeah.
Ukraine for sure, right? So here's a larger country, more military power, larger economy, trying to impose its will on a region that it some of its leaders review as belonging to them, right? So, Putin and others view Ukraine as a country that shouldn't exist,
Mhm.
a region in their view that should be part of Russia. And of course, Ukrainians don't believe that at all, right? And the United States sides with Ukraine. You also have major distinctions between the two countries. Ukraine trying to become a functioning democracy and join NATO, and Russia, a functional authoritarian state that is trying to thwart NATO and the United States, not just in Europe, but also all around the world. So very similar. Serbia Russia is like Serbia was back then. Ukraine is kind of like Kosovo. There are some significant differences. So Kosovo, I'm sorry, Serbia is a much smaller country. Easier for the United States to basically impose its will, right? It was an ethnic campaign. The United States intervened militarily by dropping bombs and then by threatening a ground assault. And the combination of those things forced Serbia to withdraw to end the ethnic cleansing campaign. We don't have those tools when it comes to Russia. We can't bomb Russia. We can't put troops on the ground, and no one's advocating for that because the consequences would be much more severe. It's a nuclear power. I think we all know what the consequences would be. It'd be a war with Russia. So I think the key is being steadfast, working with NATO and imposing costs on Russia and supporting Ukraine at all points. And so it's good to see that the Trump administration is coming back to that strategy, having failed at trying to bring a peaceful resolution. The key for us, Evangeline, people like you, other Americans, is, if this is important to you, and it's not just Ukraine, but, democracy in general, particularly democracy in the Balkans, is staying involved, communicating with your member of Congress, your representative, and with others, being part of demonstrations, doing anything else that we can do to ensure that the United States remains steadfast in its support of Ukraine will be really important, and not giving in to Russia. So there's a role for average Americans to play, and it's an important one, and people are playing it. You go around the United States, you see Ukrainian flags all over the place. We didn't have that, by the way, with Kosovo. I don't remember traveling to the United States and seeing Albanian flags around. So that's a big deal. That kind of commitment is real. The energy around it is real. We just have to keep it up and not get exhausted by the ongoing fight.
For sure. I love that point. I remember in your book, you also mentioned that staying consistent and sticking to your issue and staying passionate was a very key aspect to it. I love that.
Yes.
You've been the forefront advocate for major projects such as DC Vote, aiding Albania in the road to democracy, ending ethnic cleansing in Kosovo, and many more. Throughout your projects, what has been the hardest part of advocating and how have you overcome it?
The hardest part of advocating is getting the attention of people who have power.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you have to identify who those people are.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people think of advocacy as like you go out, you send a message, you join a rally, you post something on social media, right? That's how we advocate a lot now is like, we send out messages, and that's useful to an extent. But as an organizer, there's got to be something more specific, and there has to be a real specific strategy. It starts with all kind of elements,
Mm-hmm.
what you want to achieve,
Mm-hmm.
and why, and whether that's helpful, how you talk about it, but also identifying who are the critical people who can actually get the things done that you want to get done. Like specifically, who are they? Where do they stand on your issues? Do you have a relationship with those people? If not, how do you get to them? Who has influence over those people? If they're opponents, what does that mean for you to have people in power who disagree with you strongly on whatever set of issues? And then who are the people around them, other people within a structure of power and influence. Let's say if you're thinking about the federal government, you're talking about members of Congress who should have a role, may not be the committee chairs,
Mhm.
the people who have the most power, or let's say somebody at the State Department or at the White House. So thinking through that strategy and identifying the people is a first step, but then you have to get their attention
Mhm.
and you have to get them to align with you. Both of those things can be really difficult because people in those positions are very overwhelmed. Even the folks who agree with you and support you, they have limited time, limited resource, limited staff. So you have to think creatively about how you get their attention, whether it's trying to get their attention for a meeting or get their attention through public engagement. You have to think about how you align with their interests. So knowing their interests is really important. You have to think about how you use language, what your messaging is, and if you're using language that resonates with those people, you're going to be much better off than if you use language that does not, right? So
Mhm.
that requires understanding their positions on other issues, what they've said in the past. So advocacy at an organizational level, when you're organizing and you're trying to be effective, is very complicated. It takes a
Yes.
lot of work and it takes a lot of patience, and it has all of those elements. Uh, Even when you have all those elements together, getting people's attention, and then the next part, getting them to take the actual steps to support you, those are the hardest. And it's because of the incredible demands on people's time
Mhm.
for attention, but also for action. Um, so being aware of that, sticking to it, and having a campaign that is multi-year and an expectation that anything you're trying to achieve that's important in public policy is going to take you some time. Knowing that up front and being prepared for that long fight is absolutely critical.
Yes. I remember DC Vote took decades to complete, and it really plays a part of having that consistency, as I said, as I mentioned prior. Um, you mentioned multiple times in your book, I read your book, Winning the Inside Game, the Handbook of Advocacy Strategies, and I thought it was brilliant. Um,
Great. Thank
I loved the inside scoop on the legislative process. I loved seeing all the different intricate aspects. As you mentioned, it's quite complicated advocacy. When I went into the book, I did not think advocacy was that complex, but then seeing how you switch your container, the different audiences that you target, the different leaders that you see, it's quite interesting. And I recommend if you are interested in politics, go and read Mr. Zherka's book, Winning the Inside Game. It will be linked in our description, so please go and support him. Ask you, you mentioned multiple times in your book the importance of bipartisan support, stating that, quote, at DC Vote, we approached all organizations, both parties and folks in the DC government as potential allies. We refused to let boundaries between us and other people create barriers to collaboration. I love that. I love that line.
thank
Many
you.
of my peers have lost faith in the role of political parties as they're often seen as too extreme in that they don't support the views of the people anymore. Um, what kind of change do you believe is necessary to bridge this divide within society and ensure that our legislators represent more of the people, not really the parties?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's a really big question. And so much what's happening right now, Evangeline, is in some ways disheartening, right? Because you see people's loss in of faith in institution you just described,
Yeah.
young people losing faith in political parties. You also, what you described is kind of losing faith in politicians and politics, right?
Mm.
Um, that's really that's really tough because the answer to that is partially structural, which is hard, right? Part of the structural part is we have gerrymandered districts that where the political fight to, especially at the federal level, um, to win those districts is a fight within your party, not across party lines, right? So one of the answers to that polarization is to have congressional districts set by people who are neutral rather than by politicians.
Mm.
And that, that's one of the structural responses to what you're talking about.
Mhm.
The challenge when you have people fighting within a small group is it's easy to go to the extreme, right? If
Mhm.
you're like a Republican or a Democrat and you're trying to get the nomination, and that's the only thing you need is a nomination because the general election is locked up,
Mhm.
right? Because you can't, the opponent party can't ever win. Then it's easy to just say, "Hey, I'll do more. I'll do more. Anything you want, anything that the voters want, I'll do more of it." And then, of course, the most active voters in a primary are those who are most partisan.
Mhm.
Right? So primary elections do not have the kind of turnout that general elections have. And so a big part of the challenge is that. The other big part of the challenge is social media. Um, the algorithms prioritize controversy
Yes.
and really flood people with controversy, and you quickly move from something that is sort of neutral and thoughtful to something that is dramatic and oftentimes misleading, if not, just direct misinformation. That incentivizes, unfortunately, people who are in politics, both at the organizational level, at the individual level, but also at the party and political level. It incentivizes people to use short language phrases, to talk in extremes and absolutes,
Mhm.
because it's easier for people to grasp them. It's easier to get people riled up. So that's a big challenge, and I think that the part of the solution to that is for young people to demand more and to demand better, right?
Mhm.
And I think that means demanding more and demanding better from their representatives and people in politics, but also from themselves, for themselves, and from each other. So if you are angry with the way politics is engaged in the United States or with political parties,
Mhm.
then part of the solution is not to be part of the problem, right? Is to
Mhm.
reject being part of the problem. It's to
Mhm.
say, I'm going to behave a different way. I'm going to conduct myself a different way. And I'm going to also call out other people and ask them, to, show respect, show deference,
Mhm.
explain themselves, and back what they have to say up with facts.
Mhm.
Uh, One of the things we know in the United States is there's a lot of agreement about around the issues that need to be solved, and like for the most part, like how to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the crazy thing between Democrats, independents, and a lot of Republicans, or even the other way around.
Mhm.
Um, there isn't that much disagreement, but politics and politicians, it's if you're fighting in that space, if you like just assume everyone agrees, how do you
Mhm.
distinguish yourself, right? You have to, part of it is blaming the other side
Mhm.
and talking about how terrible they are. But I think young people like yourself, if people start with themselves, hold themselves accountable, hold their peers accountable, family and friends, it makes it a lot easier for them to hold politicians accountable. And each of those things are important.
I love that. Yes. Um, I was planning on asking you at the end of this interview, but it seems like it's appropriate to ask you now. Um, a lot of teenagers, or like people as in myself, we want to get involved in politics, but we don't necessarily have the time or like materials to start coalitions or be really invested in voting elections. So how can we advocate to pass legislation or to fix issues to help create real change
Yeah.
besides helping ourselves?
The best way to do that is to take two really important but small steps, right?
Mhm.
One is to decide the issue areas that you care about the most.
Mhm.
And a lot of us have a bunch of issues that we care about.
Mhm.
Um, and organizations and politicians and others, influencers, are good at flooding us with stuff, right?
Mhm.
So it's easy to jump around from one issue to the other, but every individual, especially if you want to get involved in advocacy, um, you can only do so much. So you have to prioritize. So what are the two things that are most important to you? I would start with two.
Mhm.
I'm sure that there are others, but like prioritize. Maybe there are five, maybe there are 10. I care about a lot of issues, but I have to prioritize the ones I care about. And then the second step is uh, find the organization or organizations that work on those issue areas and with whom you are aligned.
Mhm.
So that could be at the state level, could be at the local level, could be at the federal level. A lot of our politics now is federalized, right? People uh, are really focused on what's happening federally because that's what
Yeah,
is driving so much of social media
in
and
the
the
media.
news.
Yeah.
Um, and then once you you make that decision, you find the organization, join that group, right? Give them a little bit of money. It doesn't take a lot. Get on their newsletter distribution list, join some of their meetings, follow them on social media, and work through those groups. They will have opportunities for volunteering, for writing letters to your representatives, for learning more about the issues. And the learning part is really important because if you're going to be an effective advocate, especially if you're going to use your voice for advocacy,
Mhm.
then you want to know what you're talking about. And that's the way to do it. Use, join something essentially. Join an effort, join a group, and enable them to support you in your advocacy, and that's the way you can have an impact.
So I love your notion about joining a group. I was really interested with Amnesty International for the longest time. Are you familiar with the organization?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
And I was trying to start an Amnesty branch at my school. And my school, our demographic is largely immigrants from Southeast Asia. I live in the Bay Area. And while I was trying to get petitions for my club, a lot of students were expressing hesitancy because of the cases in the past few months where, Secretary of State Mark Rubio says that 300 revoked visas from universities were on account of campus activism. So while I was trying to petition for my club, a lot of my peers who are immigrants or on green cards or their families are on green cards were expressing a lot of hesitancy because they were afraid that they might face repercussions for having their names tied to Amnesty. So, do you believe that there's like a legitimate threat to my peers and their citizenship if they take part in a club such as Amnesty?
I don't believe a legitimate legal reason for revoking someone's permanent residence, which is what you're talking about, right? A green card,
Yeah.
that a legitimate reason for that would be engagement in an organization.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a freedom of speech, freedom of association, um, set of rights that are, um, I think, both of those are in the First Amendment of the
Mhm.
U.S. Constitution,
Yes.
right? So those are among our most elemental freedoms as individuals: the right to assembly, the right to free speech.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't believe that those are legitimate reasons for revocation.
Mhm.
Uh, However, the administration has decided in some instances, I believe, and may decide in the future um, to start a process with someone who shares their views, and if those views are not in alignment with their own.
Yeah.
So on one hand, a legitimate reason for revoking someone's status may not exist, but that hasn't necessarily stopped this administration from
Mhm.
taking action nonetheless.
Okay.
So I think it's something that people need to be aware of. They need to be aware of what the risks are.
Mhm.
Be thoughtful about how they engage.
Mhm.
Talk to their family members, especially young people, people who are minors. Talk to their family members and others and say, this is what I believe in and this is what I want to do.
Mhm.
Uh, do you think that there's a risk? And be in constant contact with those people, and then also get the support of those groups and other groups. There are pro-immigration groups, pro-immigrant right groups that are out there and available to help people who, who believe that their rights are being trampled. So I think be thoughtful, be strategic. In some ways, this is kind of like a precursor to being involved in advocacy. Be thoughtful, be strategic, assemble your people, understand who they are, make sure that they know what you're trying to do, get their support, get the outside support, or at least access to the outside support, and then move forward. I think in our country and in every democracy, people need to have courage. And as long as if you know what you're getting into, what the risks are, and you stay within the acceptable parameters of engagement, then I think, under those circumstances, people should engage. That's how we maintain a vibrant democracy. That's how we prevent an erosion of the rights of permanent residents and also citizens.
Yes. I just wanted to continue on the students who have had their visas revoked. So as I mentioned, about 300 revoked visas within major universities such as Harvard or Berkeley. And also around 1,500 students have also had their visas suddenly revoked for minor alleged crimes. What is your opinion on this situation? And do you believe that exchange programs can bounce back from this?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and just to distinguish between visas and permanent residence, right? So if you're a permanent U.S. resident, you have a lot more rights. You are essentially a citizen without the ability to vote. There are some other small distinctions, and they're important. Your rights as a permanent resident are a little bit more circumscribed than the rights of an American citizen when it comes to the ability to have that revoked. You can't have your citizenship revoked, really. So that distinction is really important given the last part of the conversation we just had. With respect to students who are here, it's not something we did routinely in the United States that I'm aware of in a very long time, and maybe there was a time in our country when we did that. The questions that I would ask myself and the administration is like, why? What are we fearful of? Are we fearful of people engaging in a debate? Are we fearful of opposing voices? I mean, this is the United States. This is the country where we have diverse voices. We have debates. We have historically enabled those debates. And coming here as a student on a visa, part of what we want people to get is to experience that, right? To experience the what it means to engage with people in a debate, to share their views, to have differences of opinion, and to express those views in a way that's peaceful and respectful. So a lot is lost if students on visas aren't able to engage in that way, in the way that American students are. A lot is lost for them, and I think a lot is lost for us as a country. A big part of why we want them to come here. So one is, universities want them to come here as students. They pay tuition. There's a business reason. There's an economic reason for the United States. They come here, they spend money, right? But the bigger reason they come here and we allow students to come here is we want them to learn about our system of government and how our society works. And that means allowing them to engage in every aspect of our society, including politics, including political debate. When we constrict that, what they're learning is diminished, and their ability to go back to their countries and promote democracy, American-style democracy, becomes diminished. And we are effectively constricting ourselves and our goals as a country when we do that. And it's very unfortunate to see, and I hope it doesn't continue. There are things that students who come on visas may engage in, activities that may engage in that are illegal. That's a whole different story, right? So if you're in the United States and you're committing, misdemeanors or other crimes, and that are associated with your political engagement, that's a different story. Then you're making a choice.
Mhm.
Um, and that has to be looked at differently. But I think engaging in debate and being part of the political process is something we want them to do. We should encourage it, and then we want them to go back and ensure that their countries protect that right of engagement and that right of freedom of speech as well.
Yes, so kind of reinforcing the whole of building of democracy. I know that you went back to Albania for a little bit to help them build up their democracy. That's correct? Is it?
Yes,
So, can you tell me a little bit about your experience with that? What are some challenges that you faced? How did you overcome them?
yeah. So my wife and I were in law school during the fall of communism in Central and Eastern Europe,
Hmm. Hmm.
and we were both going into jobs after law school, and friends of ours were going to Poland to uh, be involved with the transition to democracy in Poland. Albania had just become a democratic state, and
Hmm.
so we decided to go to Albania to to experience that as well. My wife worked on environmental regulations directly. That was her project. I
Hmm.
was there as a research fellow, focusing on the criminal procedure code, and through that engagement with the Ministry of Justice, I was often in conversations where they were asking me my opinions and my thoughts. Like, we want to achieve this goal through a change in our criminal procedure code. What do you think about it?
Hmm.
And luckily for me, I had just taken criminal procedure. And even though I wasn't at law school, even though I wasn't an expert, because I'd just taken a class and I grew up in the United States and I experienced law school in a Western country, and they were trying to change a system that was not Western nor democratically oriented. I was able to help them with some of that work. Um, but it was difficult being there. It was, small, poor country, months after the fall of communism. It's a lot of infrastructure needs, significant challenges with respect to food, where to buy food, how to cook it. Getting around. The apartment building we lived in didn't have insulation, and it couldn't accommodate all the plug-in here. So there were a lot of like personal challenges.
Yeah.
But it's one of those experiences where you do something, it's hard, and you get a lot out of that experience, even though it's hard. And it's certainly rewarding to be there during that time and to help them in small ways with the progress that they were making.
I find that very valuable, and I think a lot of people sometimes forget how privileged we are here in America and,
Yes.
all the different plugins we have, or, certain privileges like running electricity. I really resonate with that. I also know that you interned with Congressman George Miller and Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan. Can you tell me a little bit about those internships and
Yeah.
how they
Yeah.
were?
Yeah. So when I was in college, my school had a semester in Washington, D.C. program, and I grew up in New York. And Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan was a senator from New York, actually very well known at the time. And I was lucky to get an internship with him. Very competitive and difficult, but it gave me, and by then I was intent on working in politics and public policy, and it gave me an insider's view of what that was like. I sat in on hearings, I took notes, I prepared memos, I wrote letters to constituents, um, and it was just thrilling. And then every time I walked up to the Capitol building, that building took my breath away. And even now, that's true. Even though we have the partisanship and all the difficulties, it's majestic, it's beautiful, it's a symbol of our democracy. And that convinced me to actually go back and to work as a legislative counsel for George Miller. And that was after law school. After I came back from Albania, we moved to Washington, D.C., and I was lucky to get that job. And at the beginning of our interview, you asked me what are some of the difficult things about advocacy, and part of my response to you was getting people's attention and getting them to do things that even they want to do.
Mhm.
And a big part of what informed that view and that understanding was the work I did for him, because I covered a lot of issue areas.
Mhm.
We didn't have time for me to be an expert on any one of them, but I needed to know enough about each area
Mhm.
to be effective for him. And so what that meant was understanding how to identify the key issues that are
Mhm.
important, where to get information about those key issues, how to
Mhm.
summarize them, and also what to exclude, what issue areas to exclude, what information was less important for me to learn and also to share with him. Um, he was a great boss. I'm lucky to work for him as one of these terrific people who go into politics, and we need a lot more of those people.
Yeah, I also have like I visited the Capitol in Washington, D.C. when I was in second grade, so around the Clinton-Trump election. And I also saw all of the interns. I saw the beautiful Capitol building. That's kind of what made me fall in love with politics too, was seeing all of our museums and historic monuments. But I've also had such a large interest in getting an internship with senators and legislators, and it's so nice to see how big of a positive impact it made on you because it gives me more hope. So thank you
Yeah,
so
that's
much for
great.
that.
Well, you should definitely, yeah, yeah, stick with it, and you'll be able to get one. It's just you got to keep trying.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, also, fun fact. I read on your Civica profile that October 26, 2012 has been recognized by Mayor Vincent Gray as Ilir Zherka Day. My birthday is the day before that, October
All right.
25th. So I just thought that was a fun fact.
There's that tie. Yeah, there's that tie. Yeah, you're Scorpio, as we used to say back in the day.
Is October 26th your birthday also?
It's the 27th.
27th. Oh my goodness. That's so insane. I love that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Zerka, for joining us here on Polity for Teens. I appreciate you coming out and sharing your past and all of your achievements. Please make sure to go check out Mr. Zerka's book, Winning the Inside Game, the Handbook of Advocacy Strategies. And please make sure to go check out for future episodes on Polity for Teens. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.